Has Atlus done something that no other third-party developer has done when it comes to large-scale RPGs on the Nintendo Switch? Well, I think yes and no. But before we get into that, please make sure you hit that like button and also subscribe if you are someone new for daily gaming videos, anime content, live streams, and more. And also make sure you hit that notification bell to get my videos first. Now let's talk about this because Atlus has received a lot of flack over the years from Nintendo fans for not delivering on Persona 5 yet, at least. Not delivering on old school Persona games, not bringing over some of the titles that people would love to see from the Nintendo DS or the Nintendo 3DS and making new iterations of those. However, they have a trump card, they have an ace up their sleeve, and that is Shin Megami Tensei V. This game is looking absolutely spectacular, and I went back and looked at all the other large-scale games that have been done on the Nintendo Switch, or big RPGs that have been done on the Nintendo Switch, and there are so few examples from Japanese developers, and there's pretty much no examples from Western developers. Now, let's make sure that we're clear about what we're talking about here. So, what I'm discussing is how Shin Megami Tensei V, especially after watching the latest information and trailers that are coming out from this game, there's been no other title to make a large-scale, ground-up RPG on the Nintendo Switch. The two closest things that I have found is Dragon Quest XI S on the Nintendo Switch, but we also have to remember that game, yes, made ground up for it, but it was late. It came out on the PlayStation 4 and also on the Nintendo 3DS first, so Switch owners had to wait. With SMT5, there's no waiting going on. It's not something that's based off of something else. It is a completely new original game, ground up, taking advantage of the system to its fullest and releasing on the platform without having to say, okay, it came out on this first and we have to wait longer. So that's what separates it from Dragon Quest XI S. Then you also have Monster Hunter Rise, but that's not quite an RPG. I guess it has the elements of it, but it's kind of like an action game with some RPG elements as well. So I guess you can count that game, but not really a pure RPG like Dragon Quest. And this other game that we're going to talk about, which is Monster Hunter Stories 2, which I kind of put that, while it's awesome and it's a large scale game and it looks great and everything, I kind of put that in the same scope and scale of a Bravely Default 2, which was made for the Nintendo Switch, but more on a little bit of a lower end in terms of what they're doing budget wise and what they're looking for with the game. Still very good. Bravely Default, still amazing. We're not talking about how good these games are, because anybody could like what I talked about before more than SMT5. Obviously, the themes and everything, the game isn't out yet, but I'm just talking about from a scope and scale, and it looks like from a budget standpoint, SMT5 seems to be ahead of everything, or right there on that level of a Dragon Quest XI S. But the biggest difference, like I already stated, is the fact that we didn't have to wait for it. It's exclusive and being built with the Switch in mind first and foremost, which is just rare to come by when it comes to a large-scale RPG. The only thing you can think of are those two Capcom games, and one of them isn't necessarily an RPG with Monster Hunter Rise. Elements, yes, some people consider it, but not in the same vein of the other games that I've already talked about. And once again, Monster Hunter Stories 2, not bad at all, but SMT5 definitely seems, from a graphical standpoint and from just like a scope and scale standpoint, definitely bigger and took a bit more time in terms of what they are doing with this game. Like I said before, I've been watching the trailers for this. I've been watching some of the Daily Demon vlogs, but the latest story trailer that didn't come out too long ago, along with the info drops they've been doing, just shows that this game, built on Unreal Engine 4, is like at another level. We haven't seen anybody else do this to this level with an RPG made for the system. Also, you have to look at it this way, that Monster Hunter Rise is coming to PC next year as well, so there's also that. But to me, it's just very interesting, right? It's very interesting, and if you look at it, like I alluded to before, there's no Western developer that has even came close to trying to provide this type of experience, some type of new big RPG just for the Switch. We've had some indie developers come in and make some great stuff from the West, but there's been nothing from the major companies. Everything has just been port from EA or from Ubisoft or from some of these other developers. It's all just been ports that are pretty much downgraded. They're not built for the Switch itself. They're kind of made on other platforms and then put on Switch. Then they get the tags of impossible port, or wow, this looks pretty good for Switch, or oh, I can take it anywhere that I want. But there's this way better version, or there's this version that's just obviously it's not optimized fully for the Switch. It's not built from the ground up for it. So Western developers haven't really made anything at all. Now, they've done some good adaptations, don't get me wrong, but once again, these are ports. These are games that are based off something else, or usually they're like late. They've been like years late sometimes, months late sometimes. Sometimes they're like multiple years late, like The Witcher 3, you know. So there's that aspect to it as well, which obviously does not put it in the same class in terms of what I'm talking about with what Atlus is doing with Shin Megami Tensei V. So what does all of this mean? Well, one, giving credit where credit is due to Atlus, because a lot of people felt that this game was going to be canceled, and a lot of people felt that this game wasn't going to be able to live up to what maybe even Persona 5 has done. But based off of what we've seen here, not only is it going to live up to what Persona 5 is, it looks like it could exceed it in many different areas when it comes to the game. So that's definitely a positive sign. But also another thing is that this needs the support of the RPG base on the Nintendo Switch. If you're even interested at all in RPGs, this should be a game with Shin Megami Tensei V coming out this November on the Switch, right there in that Black Friday big slot when it comes down to it, with Pokemon as well. This should be a game that you definitely support, because people have been begging and have been asking for these style of games in terms of actually taking advantage of the Nintendo Switch, it not being a downgraded port. Original games, new games, not remasters, not remakes, not the ports of stuff, but actually original new games built for this system that took multiple years to make, and here it is. And from what I'm looking at here, I haven't seen a Japanese RPG that looks as good as Shin Megami Tensei V on the Nintendo Switch from a graphical standpoint. Now, in art style, you guys can argue that all day when it comes down to it, but when it comes to just like the textures and how the game looks itself and the graphics of the game, definitely seems like SMTV is the best one to date. So those PS2 graphics are pulling in overdrive here. No, I'm just joking with that one here, guys. But yeah, the game is looking absolutely phenomenal, and of course the use of Unreal Engine 4 is definitely helping out with that. But it goes to show you that Atlus spent a ton of time and money and effort on this game to get it look the way that it looks on the Nintendo Switch, and to be able to get all of those demons rendered beautifully. The game just looks better and better as we go along here. Now, back at E3, they stated that the game was about 90% complete, so it doesn't seem like there's going to be any type of delays or anything like that. They've already been taking pre-orders. The game is going to be done after all of these years, after being one of the first games announced for the Nintendo Switch. And it's time for us, for those who love RPGs, those who want to see Nintendo, not only with the Switch, but going forward, show that there is a base to make unique experiences built for the platform. Something that we haven't seen as much as we saw like on the Wii, for example, with a lot of games when it comes to from third-party developers and everything. So having games built specifically for the platform with the Switch, and also going forward, will the gamers support it? Will the Nintendo fans support those third-party games? And I think that this is a game, especially when it comes to a publisher like Atlus and a developer like Sega, this needs to be supported. They need to see that people are into this for the future of other types of games. Or if they wanted to do something else, they need to know that fans are going to support it. And with this type of effort, I think it definitely deserves that type of support. So on my live stream recently, we talked about this in terms of where does it need to sell and things like that. And while we don't know what Atlus and Sega are looking for, they have their own internal numbers. They have their investment in terms of what they did with this game, how much they spent. Then they also have what they think they're going to make with it. They have all sorts of metrics and data to determine if it's going to be a success or not. But from the outside looking in, if you're just comparing it to previous SMT games, since those have been around now for decades at this point, none of them has really crossed 1 million units. So I would think with the install base of the Nintendo Switch, along with the hype that has been brought, the new sense of fans from the Persona base that has came over, from the Switch itself, I think that anything under 1.5 to 2 million units in sales is definitely something that I'm personally thinking that, hey, that's not enough considering what they're doing with this game, considering how much people bought other types of RPGs on the Nintendo Switch. There's no reason why this type of game can't do 2 million plus, right? Can't do 3 million, something like that, and really show Atlus that we want these type of games. And yet it would be beneficial to them to make more original games built from the ground up for the Switch platform going forward, because Nintendo fans will support it, but also to bring over some of those other games if you can really optimize and bring it over as well, as Switch fans are buying these type of RPGs. So I'm hoping that's the case here. I think that's going to be the end goal of this, but I wanted to point it out because to me, it's just so impressive. This type of large scale RPG on the Switch that's just very rarely done at all in this sense. Really, you can count on one hand how many times that you think it might have been done, but there's also caveats and, well, but when it comes to certain RPGs, right? So pretty crazy to see that, but that's just my thoughts on it here. I cannot wait for SMT5 to come out. I think it's going to be an extremely good game, but what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Check out the links in the description. We've got Twitter. Go and give us a follow on there. Stay up to date on all the latest gaming news and information. Also, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video if you can. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you for the next one. Peace.